Hello, Steve.
Hello, we'll get started in just a minute. Hi, everybody. My name is Jill Merkel, and I'm a registered dietitian. I am based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and I am one of the dietitians that consults with Survivor Fitness. So tonight I'm going to be talking to you about nutrition and gut health. So just a little bit of an introduction to the gut and to the microbes. Maybe you've heard that term before, which is really talking about the bacteria that's in our gut. So the gut is actually like a pretty large portion of our body. I'm not sure if it's technically considered an organ, but it weighs more than the brain. So it's a pretty significant portion of the body. And it's been estimated that there's more than 100 trillion bacteria in our gut. So that's a lot, mostly in the large intestines. It also has a huge impact on our immune system. So our gut and our immune system are really connected. And so this means that the gut may influence some disease states like autoimmune disorders such as arthritis, lupus, celiac disease, MS. It also plays a really big role in mood and mental health. So our gut can actually impact our mood and our mental health, such as depression and anxiety. So really powerful stuff here. And then also it can affect food allergies and intolerances, as well as skin disorders, because there can be some inflammation in the gut, which can cause some skin disorders. And then so much more. This is still a huge ongoing research topic because it is such a big part of the body, and there is more than 100 trillion bacteria to study and to look at. So it's always being researched, always being looked at to learn more about it, and especially these digestive illnesses, which at least 70 million people in the US suffer from some sort of digestive illness. And so it can be really hard to pinpoint what exactly is causing the symptoms. I have a lot of clients in my private practice, that have some sort of digestive or GI issues, and they're frustrated because it's so hard to detect, it's hard to go to the right doctor, the right provider. It's hard for the provider to know exactly which test to run. Sometimes the tests are inconclusive, or it could be more than one thing is causing the issue. So especially from a nutrition standpoint, it can be a lot of trial and error to see, how does this food affect me? Is this food causing an issue, or is it something else? So it can be really frustrating for people. Next, I'm going to show a video. We'll try it. Videos can be kind of glitchy on an online system, but we'll give it a go. And it's just an overview of how the food we eat affects our gut. So I think it's a good overview of what we're talking about here, the different types of foods, the different types of bacteria or microbes in the gut. So we'll give it a try here.
Trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi live on or inside of us, and maintaining a good, balanced relationship with them is to our advantage. Together, they form the gut microbiome, a rich ecosystem that performs a variety of functions in our bodies. The bacteria in our guts can break down food the body can't digest, produce important nutrients, regulate the immune system, and protect against harmful germs. We don't yet have the blueprint for exactly which good bacteria a robust gut needs, but we do know that it's important for a healthy microbiome to have a variety of bacterial species. Many factors affect our microbiomes, including our environment, medications like antibiotics, and even whether we were delivered by C-section or not. Diet, too, is emerging as one of the leading influences on the health of our guts. And while we can't control all these factors, we can manipulate the balance of our microbes by paying attention to what we eat. Dietary fiber from foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, and whole grains is the best fuel for gut bacteria. When bacteria digest fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids that nourish the gut barrier, improve immune function, and can help prevent inflammation, which reduces the risk of cancer. And the more fiber you ingest, the more fiber-digesting bacteria colonize your gut. In a recent study, scientists exchanged the regular high-fiber diets of a group of rural South Africans with the high-fat, meat-heavy diets of a group of African Americans. After just 2 weeks on the high-fat, low-fiber, Western-style diet, the rural African group showed increased inflammation of the colon, as well as a decrease of butyrate. That's a short-chain fatty acid thought to lower risk of colon cancer. Meanwhile, the group that switched to a high-fiber, low-fat diet had the opposite result. So what goes wrong with our gut bacteria when we eat low-fiber processed foods? Lower fiber means less fuel for the gut bacteria, essentially starving them until they die off. This results in less diversity and hungry bacteria. In fact, some can even start to feed on the mucus lining. We also know that specific foods can affect gut bacteria. In one recent microbiome study, scientists found that fruits, vegetables, tea, coffee, red wine, and dark chocolate were correlated with increased bacterial diversity. These foods contain polyphenols, which are naturally occurring antioxidant compounds. On the other hand, foods high in dairy fat, like whole milk, and sugar-sweetened sodas were correlated with decreased diversity. How food is prepared also matters. Minimally processed, fresh foods generally have more fiber and provide better fuel. So lightly steamed, sautéed, or raw vegetables are typically more beneficial than fried dishes. There are also ways of preparing food that can actually introduce good bacteria, also known as probiotics, into your gut. Fermented foods are teeming with helpful probiotic bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. Originally used as a way of preserving foods before the invention of refrigeration, fermentation remains a traditional practice all over the world. Foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh, and kombucha provide variety and vitality to our diets. Yogurt is another fermented food that can introduce helpful bacteria into our guts. That doesn't necessarily mean that all yogurt is good for us, though. Brands with too much sugar and not enough bacteria may not actually help. These are just general guidelines. More research is needed before we fully understand exactly how any of these foods interact with our microbiomes. We see positive correlations, but the insides of our guts are difficult places to make direct observations. For instance, we don't currently know whether these foods are directly responsible for the changes in diversity, or if something more complicated is happening. While we're only beginning to explore the vast wilderness inside our guts, we already have a glimpse of how crucial our microbiomes are for digestive health. The great news is we have the power to fire up the bacteria in our bellies. Fill up on fibers, fresh and fermented foods, and you can trust your gut to keep you going strong.
All right, so I think that was a good overview because for me, it's just hard to conceptualize like everything that's happening in the digestive system. The body, the human body is just an amazing machine. And just, I think we take a lot of stuff for granted that it's doing every day, all day. And the digestive system really thinking about, that we have a ton of bacteria in there and what we're feeding it can make a difference in the number of bacteria and the types of bacteria. And then those bacteria is what makes a difference in disease states, mood, all of those things that we talked about. So it's really kind of crazy, but in a good way to think about this stuff. So now we're going to kind of break it down and talk about each of those individual things, starting with the fact that there's a lot of factors that influence our gut. Like the video said, the way that we came into the world, what was the birthing method, that can impact our gut because we're getting the bacteria from the mother. So it starts from day one. And then whether we're breastfed or formula fed, our environment, if we're using a lot of antibacterial cleaning products, a lot of harsh products, that can really influence, that kills both the good and the bad bacteria. Having a pet or being outdoors can actually increase the different types of bacteria that we have in our bodies. Stress, medication, age, gender, food, which we're going to go into. So many different things impact our gut. And so I think it's important to think about, we don't have to do everything perfectly, right? There's no perfect way of eating, no perfect way of living. If you take anything away from this presentation, it's what's one thing I can do differently this week, and we're going to talk about some different ways of doing that, things that we can add in, things that we can focus on and have an influence on. So foods that help promote gut health that they mentioned in that video is the pre and probiotics. So the prebiotics is really a type of fiber. So it comes from some different fiber foods like fruits and vegetables. And that's what the probiotics feed on. So the probiotics is the live bacteria that's in our gut. So maybe if you think about yogurt, for instance, on the label, it talks about, live bacteria is in here. We're trying to get that good bacteria in. But once that bacteria is in, it needs something to feed on in order to survive. So the live bacteria is our probiotics that is feeding on the prebiotics. So we really need both, which comes from fiber and then from our probiotic foods like yogurts, kefir, kombucha, sauerkraut, kimchi, a lot of those fermented foods. There's also two different types of fiber, soluble and insoluble. So soluble, like it sounds, attracts water and turns to gel. So if you think about oatmeal, when you pour water on top, it kind of soaks up the water. It turns into kind of a gel or kind of a mushy type of consistency. And so that attracts water and helps slow down digestion. So different types of grains, beans, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables are going to give us that soluble fiber. There's a common fiber supplement called psyllium. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Sometimes people will take that. I do caution with fiber supplements to make sure that you're not increasing too quickly. because when we increase our fiber intake, whether from food or supplements, we want to make sure that we're drinking enough water to help move the fiber through. Otherwise, if we have too much fiber, especially if we're dehydrated, it can cause GI issues because we can get backed up. The fiber isn't being moved through. So that soluble type of fiber may help reduce blood cholesterol and blood sugars, keeps our blood sugars more stable. And then we've got insoluble fiber, which also comes from some of our different types of grains, vegetables, nuts, and beans. And that's what helps to add bulk to our stool. So it helps the food pass more quickly through the stomach and intestines. So both are important. There's clearly some crossover in the food. So a lot of foods are giving us both types of fiber. So it's not, we have to really focus on one or the other. It's really good to just get a variety of foods and a variety of food groups to make sure that we're giving our body all the fiber that it needs. Lots of benefits to eating enough fiber. Again, treating and preventing constipation, so helping to move waste through the body, can help to prevent hemorrhoids and diverticulosis, so keeping our colon happy, keeping everything healthy and working properly there. Decreasing blood cholesterol levels. It may protect against some cancers. Increasing satiety, because it does keep us feeling full longer, because fiber does take the body a little bit longer to digest than a lower fiber food. So think about an apple, which has more fiber, versus a banana, which has less fiber. The apple will keep us feeling full longer because it takes the body a little bit longer to break that down. And then it also helps with the immune system, like we've talked about, decreasing risk of disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity. So lots of benefits to fiber, and kind of an underrated or overlooked aspect of the diet. I see a lot in, my work with clients that people just aren't thinking about fiber a lot. So I think it can be one area to focus on. How can I add a little bit more? So fiber recommendations, again, we're trying to look at the number of bacteria, but also the diversity of bacteria. So we want a lot of bacteria, but we also want a lot of different types of bacteria. The daily fiber recommendations are 38 grams or more for men and 25 grams or more for women. And they found that the average intake for Americans is 15 grams. So most of us are not getting the recommended amounts. So again, a pretty easy place to start. Where can I add one? Where can I make one swap or add one more fiberful food? So some fiberful foods, obviously there's going to be a lot, but different types of beans and peas, the brand cereals, so the ones that have like additional fiber added, so like Fiber One cereals or Fiber One bars or muffins. Again, that's kind of similar to the supplement. So you want to be careful that you're not taking in too much, which can cause gas, can cause bloating, can cause some GI issues. Different types of vegetables, berries, nuts and seeds, different types of whole grains. So these are just some of the top fiberful foods. So again, where's one place I can switch something out? Is there somewhere, if I'm having oatmeal in the morning, could I add some flaxseed to it to give it a little more fiber? If normally I choose strawberries, could I add some raspberries or replace the strawberries with raspberries? Small places where we can make a little bit of increase in fiber can make a big difference. So this is a worksheet that I can send along with the recording. It's one way to evaluate your fiber intake, because it can be very tedious to try and measure and weigh and track all of your food to see if you're getting enough fiber. So this is a way to think about the different food groups, how many servings of vegetables, fruits, beans, these different food groups, how many servings are you getting per day? and then multiply it by the factor shown, which is kind of the average amount of fiber that's from a serving of that food group, and then add up the total amount of fiber consumed. And then the other half of the worksheet is, once you get your total number, what does that number mean? So again, looking at, okay, if we're getting 10 or less grams of fiber, we need to try and do better, incorporate some more fiber, versus if we're getting, you know, the recommended amount, 25 to 38 or more, depending on your gender, or even more than that. You know, again, I say increase slowly, make sure you're drinking enough fluids, because otherwise it can have some unintended GI effects. So here's some examples. This quote unquote typical American day diet that has approximately 15 grams of fiber. Maybe we have breakfast on the go at McDonald's, not a lot of fiber there. Lunch, we're having white bread instead of wheat. We're having a banana, we're having some diet soda, not a lot of fiber going on there. And then at dinner, we're having some protein, having some mashed potatoes, which says 1 gram, that would depend if you're having the peel or not, and then some broccoli. So total is only 10 grams of fiber. Obviously, this isn't a meal plan at all. This isn't saying this is what we should eat. People might eat more, might eat less, might eat differently. This is just an example of how you can go a whole day and be like, wow, I only had 10 grams of fiber, when we actually stop to think about it. Versus if we make just a couple of small changes, a couple of small swaps. So maybe for breakfast, instead of eating out, we make a Greek yogurt parfait with different types of berries and granola. We've already got 16 grams of fiber. That's more than the previous example had all day, just in breakfast. Maybe at lunch, we just switch out the bread, white bread for wheat bread, get a little more fiber there. Add in a high fiber snack like a pear and some almonds. And then at dinner, swapping out the mashed potatoes for black beans. Or again, maybe we have the potatoes, but we have the skin, and so that's going to give us some fiber. Just a couple of swaps there, and we're now at almost 44 grams of fiber. Obviously, that might be too big of a jump if we're going from 10 to 44. You might get some GI distress with that. So maybe you start with just one item, one, you know, meal or snack, one food. How can we increase a little bit and then continue to build on that? Some easy ways to incorporate more fiber: eat the whole fruit with the skin on, so we get a lot of fiber from the skin. Choose whole grains most of the time. So choose the wheat bread over the white bread, the brown rice versus the white rice, the whole wheat pasta versus the regular pasta. I say most of the time because it's perfectly okay if you prefer the white version of some of those grains. You might also want to replace some or all of the meat when you're making a soup or a chili, replacing some of that with beans or lentils. So we're getting the same amount of bulk, the same amount of, you know, portion sizes, but we're having some more fiber incorporated in. Maybe we try and eat fruits and veggies with every meal or snack. Snacking on raw vegetables, and we can get additional fiber from the dips, like a bean dip or a hummus. Again, swapping out some of those fruits and veggies with a higher fiber version, so like raspberries versus strawberries. Add those beans, lentils, peas, or seeds to your salads. So those beans, lentils, peas, legumes, those are going to be really high in fiber. So again, it can be just like a 4th cup, maybe even an 1/8 cup, add it to a salad or some other dish that you're making. Just small steps to add in more fiber. Experiment with different types of those whole grains. So if we're always choosing brown rice, maybe we switch it out for some quinoa or some barley, some of those different types of grains that we don't always kind of turn to. Swap hummus for mayo on sandwiches. Instead of breadcrumbs, we can use ground nuts or seeds as a coating for baked fish or poultry. So just small changes, small ways to test this out. If you don't like it, you can always go back to your previous way of eating and try something else. So say you try hummus on your sandwich instead of mayo and you're like, wow, I really hated that, go back to the mayo and try a different area where you can add something a little more fiberful. So a lot of people in all realms of nutrition are like, what supplements can I take? So first of all, I recommend starting with food first, looking at the overall diet, where's some fiberful foods we can swap out. If we are going to take supplements, prebiotics, so the food that the bacteria feeds on, is not necessary if we are getting enough fiber. So I do recommend food first from a prebiotic standpoint, but then the probiotics is that good bacteria. So sometimes that gets disrupted because of stress, because of environmental factors, because of medications. So when we're on, a strong medication such as an antibiotic or like chemotherapy, that's going to kill the bad bacteria, but it also kills the good. So maybe once you're done with that, you want to add in more probiotic foods like yogurts and those fermented foods, but you might also want to take a supplement to just help incorporate more of that good bacteria in. This is tricky though, because there's no one recommendation. I can't give you like, this is the probiotic to take, because there's just such a big difference between products. For supplements in general, I recommend taking a good quality brand such as Thorne, THORNE is a really good quality. Clean Athlete, clean with a K, is another good brand. I'm not sure if they have a probiotic, but it's really important to get a good quality supplement because a lot of the supplement industry is not well regulated. And so sometimes you're just wasting money, or you're getting something that could actually be harmful. It could have something in it that you don't want. Also with probiotic supplements, there's going to be a difference in the number of bacteria and the number of strains of bacteria. So again, the total bacteria, but then also the different types of bacteria. There's different strains for different issues. So it's very hard. I had a client the other day, ask what probiotic I recommend, and I'm just not sure because there's so many things to consider. So I would speak with your physician or with a GI doctor. They might have a better recommendation because there are different strains for different issues or different things that you're trying to correct. So that's the live bacteria. Again, also you want to look at how to store them. Do they need to be refrigerated? Do they need to be kept, out of the sun, out of the heat, different things that can impact that actual live bacteria that's in those products. And then fiber supplements, again, I recommend starting with foods first because the food is going to give you more than just the one ingredient that the supplement is giving you. So for example, fruits and vegetables would be giving you fiber, but also vitamins and minerals, other nutrients. Any way that you're increasing fiber, whether from food or supplements, you want to start slowly and drink more water. What are you looking for it to do? So again, kind of thinking through with intention, what is it that I want this product to do? And then that can help you to narrow down what type of fiber, what type of product, what type of probiotic. Some are going to be more well-researched than others. There's a good article on healthline.com for what's the best fiber supplement based on what you're looking for. And then foods that may harm, gut health is added sugars, which we get from a lot of different foods, such as soft drinks, juices, depends on if they have added sugars or if they're 100% fruit juice, baked good, processed foods, a lot of our condiments, those flavored yogurts like we saw in the video. So these added sugars are not giving the live bacteria in our gut the fuel that they need. So some of those bacteria can actually start to deteriorate like we saw in that video if they're not getting the proper fuel. refined or processed carbs, like those white rice versus brown rice, white bread versus whole grain bread. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 100% of the time, but where we can, trying to make those swaps so that we're getting more fiber, but also more nutrients from our food. Processed meats like bacon and sausage, bologna and hot dogs that might harm our gut health. And then those artificial sweeteners may actually cause glucose intolerance because they pass directly into the large intestine. So just something to think about when we are trying to make some swaps is, what is it that I can add more of in? But if we are trying to replace something, maybe we choose something from this list where we're not necessarily just taking stuff out. I'm a big fan of where can we add more of the good stuff in. So this might be a place where, okay, I'm normally drinking, the flavored juice that's got the extra added sugars. Maybe I can swap that out for 100% fruit juice, or even better, I can switch to a whole fruit source so that I'm getting the skin, I'm getting the fiber, I'm giving my body more nutrients. So overall, gut health may influence a lot of things, but it's also very hard to diagnose, pinpoint that one thing that may be causing the issues. So do what you can. Focus on what can you add more of, or what can you increase. Is it the prebiotics, the probiotics, the fiberful foods? Where might you start? Is it a certain food group? Is there one that's missing, or one that you're like, hey, I like that food, I just never think about it? Is there anywhere that you can kind of sub out one of those lower fiber foods for a higher fiber option? So your goal is to just break it down, make it really simple. What's one food from that high fiber food list that I can add to my day? And just try it out. If you don't like it, try a different food on the list. Just keep going down the list until you find something that you do like. And remember to drink plenty of water. If you have any questions, you can request to unmute yourself, or you can type them in the chat box. Anybody have any questions about gut health? I know some of you came in a little bit late, so you can watch the recording, which will be sent out. Fermented foods, types, and best fermented brands. So there's not, that's a hard question. This whole topic is kind of hard because there are so many factors. But thinking about, it's not necessarily about the brands, it's what types of foods. So I was trying to find what slide that was on. So those fermented foods, so the yogurts, the kefir, kombucha, sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh. So it would be more about incorporating those foods, not necessarily a certain brand, but I would look at what else is in those foods. So say you're comparing two yogurts, for instance, compare maybe the amount of bacteria or the types of bacteria that's in them, or the amounts of added sugars. Maybe choose the one with less added sugars to try it out. There's no right or wrong here. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a more definitive answer there. Also, the difference between C-section birth and vaginal birth is that the C-section, it doesn't go through the vaginal canal and get those probiotics that are, or that bacteria that the mother has. So obviously, there's nothing you can do about that. If you have to have a C-section, it's better to do that and have a healthy baby, just knowing that that might affect the types of bacteria or the amounts of bacteria, and it might have an effect later on in life. but there's really nothing that I would specifically recommend that someone does differently if they were born by C-section. It's just being aware of these things, same as we already talked about, still getting enough prebiotics, probiotics, different types of fiber. Stevia is a more natural artificial sweetener. So I don't know much of the research in terms of how it affects the gut. I think some of those artificial sweeteners, you know, like aspartame, avoiding those where there is research to show that it's harmful, choosing a more natural sweetener like stevia, or using, you know, just regular sugar. It depends on how much you're using, how often you're using it. Like anything, is there, you know, one place I can make a different swap? Can I use like a fruit to sweeten something rather than an artificial version? Or is there something that I can do to make this naturally more sweet? It doesn't have to be all or nothing is what I'm trying to say, because I don't believe that there's any one food or one thing that makes us healthy or makes us unhealthy. It's kind of looking at the whole picture. So I think it's only the yogurt. So the question is, what are the types and amounts of pre and probiotics that we should look for in fermented foods? I'm not sure that foods like sauerkraut give a type or amount of the bacteria. I think it's more in the yogurt products that will tell you the types of bacteria. They might not even tell you the amount. So from that standpoint, it would be just incorporating those foods, knowing that it's giving your body the good bacteria, but really the amounts and the types of probiotics would be when looking at a supplement. Well, if there are no other questions, that's all I have for you tonight. If you do have any additional questions, you can reach out to me. I have a contact form on my website, jillmerkelrd.com, or my email address, which I should have put on there, is Merkel, MERKEL .jill@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us through Survivor Fitness, and we will be sending out the recording and the worksheet to kind of give you an idea of evaluating your fiber intake that we looked at. So be looking out for those, and I thank you for attending and look forward to additional webinars. Thank you.